welcome to another episode of the Edmonds Moms Room podcast. I am so delighted to be joined with Jennifer Anderson of Kids Eat in Color. This is a super special episode talking all about our kids and the food they eat and how to get them to eat the food we want them to eat. And so I'm really excited to have you here, Jennifer. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Allison. Thanks so much.
A lot of what we do on this podcast is we talk about moms and moms' health and lifestyle and wellness for moms. So we haven't really focused on kids. So I am delighted to have some info that can help us support our kids and our families better.
Yeah, you know that moms have so much stress related to feeding kids. I feel like any help that we can get for reducing our stress at meal times is both a kid benefit and a mom benefit.
Absolutely. And this is like part selfish too, this interview here, because I am excited to take some tips into my own household, trying to feed my finicky 5 and 3-year-olds. So I'm excited you're here. And you're a mom as well. So tell us a little bit about your family if you're willing to share.
Sure. Yeah. So I have 2 boys. They are now 5 and 7, and I'm married to my engineer husband, and we live in Maryland.
Lovely. Cool.
We play with a lot of sticks, rocks, and mud.
Nice. My 3-year-old is a boy, and I'm learning that like all of a sudden he comes home with pockets of rocks, and my daughter never did that. So
yeah, same thing. My kids are literally coming home from school every day. One of them specifically really is into rocks, pockets full of rocks every day.
Well, at least maybe it's grounding for them or something.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, tell us a little bit about your business, Kids Eat in Color, and what you're all about.
So Kids Eat in Color is my community. I started it about 4 years ago. I was looking to help some other moms with feeding their kids. I thought I can't be the only one struggling with this. And so I started an Instagram account. That was really it. I wonder if I can help some other moms not feel so alone and not feel so alone myself. And 4 years later, it's turned into a massive Instagram account. I'm on all the social channels, the blog, the website, the Better Bites program, a meal plan that helps busy families. And of course, all the plans that I have for ways to help parents reduce their feeding stress are bigger than my brain can handle sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you manage this all?
Well, I would say poorly sometimes. It's a lot to manage, especially this year being a pandemic year. Just like any other working mom, I'm struggling to get food on the table and get the kids to school and get them logged into their classes online. And, my husband is working too. So 2 full-time working parents, or, trying to work full-time parents, it's a lot to juggle. And, managing a massive undertaking and movement of parents feeding their kids better and having less stress. It is a lot. It's a lot to manage. And some days I'm on top of it and I'm on top of the world and I'm loving every minute. I'm getting tons of stuff done. And other days I'm like, I'm gonna die,
Yeah, absolutely. Those fulfillment days, I'm sure, are worth it though.
Absolutely.
So tell me I want to be able to form this question in the right way. I've been thinking about it, like how to ask you this. Because there's so many like fad diets that I think moms like not put their kids on, but they have their own diets and then they feed their kids differently. And I guess that's just getting the kids to eat what the family's eating. So my question to you is like, when you formed Kids Eat in Color, I know you're a registered dietitian, so you have the scientific backing of this, but how did you decide, like, I guess I want to ask you, what would be considered healthy? Like, how did you determine that?
Right. So here's the thing, and I think this is the thing that we get caught up on. Especially in the United States, we are obsessed with diets. We are obsessed with body shape. We are obsessed with thinness and this quote ideal of thinness. There is a huge culture of shaming of anybody who's in a larger size or a different size or a rounder size, or, I mean, you name it. And we have internalized this to the point where we can't even make heads or tails of what is healthy and not healthy. If you go into any preschool and you talk to a teacher, she will tell you a story of a time where a kid has come in, looked at his friend's lunch and said, "Oh my gosh, your mom fed you poison," because that mom included a cookie in the lunch or a piece of candy or who knows what. We have just passed on this incredible sense of food judgment toward our kids, and they're just spitting it out like, "Oh, that food is healthy, that food's not." I remember my 5-year-old came home and said, "Is chocolate healthy? Because my friend just told me that chocolate is unhealthy." Now, am I going to sit down with him and talk about all the massive numbers of journal articles which have tried to parse out whether chocolate is healthy or unhealthy, all the different compounds, all the different effects of added sugar, not added sugar, added fat, not added fat? I remember one time in graduate school, a friend of mine did a whole presentation in biochemistry on chocolate. Right? Am I going to have that conversation with my 5-year-old? No, I'm not, because it is the question of healthy and unhealthy is so complicated and so depends on who I'm talking to and what the situation is and what their body is doing, that there is no answer. There is no answer. But what I could tell him was, chocolate does a lot of things in your body. It has a lot of compounds. And we just left it at that. Some foods do a few things in your body. Some foods do a lot of things in your body. And then are we even going to get into like dark chocolate versus, light chocolate versus, milk chocolate? I mean,
Right.
It's crazy, right? Here's the thing. Bottom line, healthy, the term healthy is relative. It just doesn't matter. It's going to be different, because if I have a kid who has an eating disorder and is losing weight and will not eat enough to survive, it doesn't matter what food that child eats. It is healthy. It is going to keep them from literally dying.
Yeah.
It is healthy.
Yeah.
Eating enough calories is healthy. That will keep you from dying. The fastest way to die is to not eat. So literally any food that you eat is going to be healthier than eating nothing.
Right.
To put it in a most extreme and unpleasant way. But then you go to the other side and like, okay, let's say you have a kid who eats really well, a huge variety of food. Now, if that kid only eats pizza and is eating tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of pizza, guess what? Pizza is not that healthy in that quantity for that child. So for one kid, it's going to be a life-saving food. For another kid, it is going to be a disease-causing food because of the situation. For maybe a kid with a medical condition, again, like an allergy to tomato, pizza could literally be life-threatening. So we gotta drop these like black and white terms. Yeah. And that's where I come from. Every food is going to have a purpose. Every food can be eaten depending on the situation. Every person is really going to need slightly different amounts and kinds, and families are all going to be different, and culture plays a role in this, and access to food. So I take a no judgment approach, and in general, I take a moderation approach.
Yeah.
But I think, the more broccoli, the better in most cases.
No, I love that. And that's what I've really gathered from following you on Instagram, is just like the diversity, I suppose, of the food. And yeah, there's so many places I want to go with this, but I guess, so you specifically program for families as well? Like, do you do individual programs? Because I know you have a lot to offer.
Right.
Right.
Currently, I'm not able to, especially in this pandemic year, cannot do one-on-one consulting, but I do have a program for the families of picky eaters called Better Bites.
Yeah, I love that. I think I'm on the wait list for that.
Yeah, it's opening in January.
Awesome. Perfect. Cool.
Well, I mean, it opens regularly. It doesn't matter when you hear this.
Yeah. Fantastic. Good. I'm glad to hear that. I saw a picture of that you posted on Instagram. You're like, this is the plate that we should feed our kids. And like, this is what we think we should feed our kids. And it was like there was like just a few bites on there. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny. I showed that to my husband and I'm like, this is like what we should be doing. This is what he tries to get me to do. And I just can't get there,
Yeah.
and so I feed them the whole grilled cheese and like too many carrots or.
Right. Right.
And yeah, so it's fascinating to see the portion size. And can you speak to the psychology a little bit behind why we should kind of minimize the portion sizes that we're giving our kids?
Yeah. So when I sit down, kids don't, they kind of have this idea in their head that like if something is on their plate, they're going to have to eat it unless we've worked really hard at training them not to. So when they sit down, they see a big plate of food, they're like, "Ugh, that's so much." It feels overwhelming, especially to a picky eater. They're going to be very overwhelmed. But if there's 3 bites of food on the plate and they know they don't have to eat any of it and it's just there, then they suddenly have a lot more control over their plate and what is going in their body. And they're able to feel comfortable enough to branch out and try new foods without any pressure at all. So I've been struggling to get one of my kids to eat their lunch at school. And this has been kind of an ongoing thing. And I've been trying to kind of sense, what is it? And, a lot of kids don't eat well at school. And recently he started a new school. And so, of course, he wasn't eating his lunch, like new environment, stress, all that. But recently I've started showing him his lunch ahead of time, almost to like get his approval. Like, is this okay for you? And the other day he said, "That is way too much food, Mommy." I said, "Oh, okay. I want you to take all this out." And he took out everything that he didn't want. And guess what? That day he ate his entire lunch. I was shocked. I thought, oh, that's so interesting. Now, I've tried different amounts and it didn't really have any effect. But I think him being able to have an amount of control over his lunch and being able to control the amount gave him a feeling of empowerment. Oh, I can be in charge of that. Now, here's the thing with kids. They should be able to choose the amount of food that they eat for themselves. We don't know how hungry they are, whether they're growing, whether they're having a slow metabolism day. We don't know any of that. They're the only ones who can know. So when we start with small portions, we're going to waste less food. We're going to give them agency over their plate. And then we're also going to encourage them to listen to their body, because they're just not going to eat the whole plate because it's there, which some kids will do. They will have to wonder, do I want more? And if they do, then they can have more. And if they don't, then they can be done.
Yeah, that's interesting. So as far as like determining them, empowering them to kind of choose their own lunches and choose their own foods, what if he's like, oh, I only want the sandwich, and he takes out the yogurt and the broccoli, so where do you?
I'd be fine with that.
You're fine with that. Okay.
I think in the lunch situation, what's so interesting is this is one kid, he tends to be my pickier eater, but he will also only eat the fruits and vegetables, which I find to be completely bizarre. And of course, my other kid is the opposite, will only eat the sandwich and leave the fruits and veggies. But I'm fine with letting them choose. If they know they only want the sandwich and you're giving them the choice of choosing what's in their lunch, then that's fine. What I generally do is kind of put the lunch together, because he's 5. I feel like 5 is really too young to really have full control over it. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions, but I'll kind of put together a balanced lunch, and then he can say yes or no. And at least some of the things are there and he's getting an exposure, even if he's not eating it right away.
Okay. Very cool. And to follow this up, for the kids that are the sandwich choosers or the vegetable only choosers, which I'm amazed.
I know, it's weird.
I struggle.
Personally, I think it's weird. I would never encourage anyone to strive for that, because here's what happens. When your kid eats only fruits and veggies for lunch, guess what you get home? You get like a flaming maniac child, because they had no protein or fat or calories. So don't strive for that.
Yeah. Interesting. So how do you start to suggest choosing other options, like adding a fruit to the lunch, or adding a protein or cheese or
Sure.
something?
So my 7-year-old, he's at the age where he is showing signs of wanting more independence over what he's eating. And sometimes he wants to make the lunch or the meal. And so we've introduced the concept of a balanced meal. And my definition with my 7-year-old, what is a balanced meal? It has a protein food, it has an energy food, and it has a fruit or a vegetable. That is like a really bare bones formula there, but he can now, I would say 80 to 90% of the time when he puts something together, it is balanced. There's a protein food, and we kind of talk through, okay, what are the protein foods? And of course he has like one protein food he chooses 90% of the time, which is this specific Larabar that is his favorite kind that he knows has protein because it has peanuts. So giving your kids a really basic, and this is for older kids. I would never ever do this with a 3-year-old. I don't do it with my 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. They're too young to really be responsible for putting together balance. But with my 7-year-old, he's got a lot more capacity. So I could say, okay, what is a balanced meal? It's got a protein food, it's got an energy food, and it's got a fruit or a vegetable. And the other day, he was complaining about me packing his lunch, and I said, okay, well, you can make it tomorrow. And he did. He said, okay. And you know what? He put together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with apples and carrots. Oh. I was like, my work here is done.
That's so amazing.
You did it. You did it. So he knew. I said, okay, you make your lunch, but I want you to make a balanced lunch for yourself. Yeah. And he did.
Cool. So kind of once he got to the point that he could conceptualize what balance looks like, then he could start to put this together. I love that. That's great.
Yeah. And it's a learning process. Sometimes I say, okay, put together a balanced snack and it's carrots. I'm like, well, okay, well, where's the protein food? Where's the energy food? Now, when it comes to pressuring kids to actually try some of those other foods, that's where I kind of put the brakes on, because based on research, we know when we pressure kids, you have to take 2 bites, you have to do this, you have to eat this before you eat that, you have to do this. We are adding on a lot more drama. We're adding on a lot more stress to both the child and ourselves, and they are less likely to eat it. Mm-hmm. Or they will eat it just to make you happy in the short run. And in the long term, their ability to listen to their own body, listen to their own hunger and fullness cues, and even like the food may be damaged in the long run. So balancing these sorts of things, like, well, yeah, I could force feed my kid broccoli now, but what about the other 70 years of their life? I would rather spend the first 10 years teaching them to learn to choose broccoli on their own, and then spend the next 70 years having a deep appreciation and love of broccoli, than force feeding them the first 10 years and then seeing them never eat broccoli for the next 70, or taking 20 years off and then being like, oh, okay, I guess it's okay. Yeah. But we really set kids up for kind of long-term dislike of vegetables when we're shoving them down their throat.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. And then hiding the vegetables. You're not really for that. You're like, let's just present them.
Right.
Okay. Don't try to sneak them in a smoothie.
If you have a picky kid,
okay,
and they are afraid of spinach, and you hide spinach in their favorite food, and they find out, not only are they going to hate spinach and they're going to distrust you, but they may never try that favorite food ever again. It may be dropped off their list of foods that they'll accept. It's a huge loss. So I never recommend sneaking. Now, some parents are like, well, it works for me. Okay, it works for you. If it's working for you, fine. But when I accidentally sneak a food into my kids' food, I did it with mushrooms recently and some taco filling. My child, I mean, there was like a visible break of trust. He looked at me like, I cannot believe you would do this to me.
Yeah.
Right? And for the next 3 days, Mommy, did you put mushrooms in this? Mommy, did you put mushrooms in this? Is there mushrooms in this? He was skeptical. He didn't want to eat. And of course, he didn't eat dinner that night. It's just not worth it. Like, what sort of nutritional benefit would those 3 tablespoons of mushrooms give the kid? Yeah. Based on, the next 3 days of him losing. So now here's one thing I could have done. I could have chopped up the mushrooms, had my kid chop them up, had my kid add them to the meat. He knows they're there. Now, had I chopped them extremely fine, maybe he couldn't even see them in the final product, but he knows they're there. And then when he eats it, even though he can't really see or taste it, it's not sneaking. He knows the whole process. Right. There's been nothing sneaky. Now, trust has not been broken, but he may be willing to try that. And I realize this can be hard. You think, well, if I put spinach in there, my kid will never eat it. That is possible. Yeah. But also, you're building long-term competence in eating. And I don't really see the nutritional value of like the occasional tablespoon of spinach. Like, is that really gonna make or break their health? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Oh, that's so good. You said so many things there. I think it's amazing to hear you say, like, let them chop the vegetables and be a part of the process. That
Mm-hmm.
personally, that's what I need to do because my kids love to, like, be given a knife and like want
Yeah,
to, like, help with this situation. So that's
right.
exciting to hear. So my next question for you is, or what age is that like considered deemed appropriate? And I know that you have utensils, I think, on your website. Is that right?
Yeah, so I have an Amazon store. I also have a blog specifically about eating utensils like forks and stuff, but I
Yeah.
think you're probably talking more like knives and
Yeah.
exciting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids love danger. Not all
Yeah.
kids, but so many of them. And so if you give them a tool that can actually cut or chop or stab, they are there for it. Especially
Yeah.
my boys are really attracted to danger, and this is great for them. So even my kid
Yeah.
who's not interested in cooking, as soon as I say, "Oh, you can use a mommy knife," he's there. He is there, showing up in his best adult stance. I am here. Now, I wouldn't give a 3-year-old a mommy knife, obviously. I think as soon as you can get your kids in the kitchen and kind of go with their skill level, their stability level, and their interest.
Yeah.
So as soon as my kids could stand up, they were invited up the step stool to start chopping with a butter knife. So my kids were walking pretty early. And and so, I was just looking at a picture yesterday. I think my little guy was maybe 11 months, 12 months old. He climbs up onto the step stool. He's got his little butter knife and he's chopping up, quote, chopping up cantaloupe. Meanwhile, my 3-year-old is sitting there with a crinkle cutter. Now, a crinkle cutter is an actual blade. It's not that sharp. It's really hard to hurt yourself. But, it took a lot of training. 2 hands on the top, you cut down on the thing. So I like to go from, now there's all sorts of child safety knives and kind of like these pumpkin cutter type looking knives that are safe. And those are great. But I like to move past those to actual knives as soon as they're capable.
Yeah.
And you're not leaving your kid alone with one of these things.
Of course. Yes.
And you're not leaving your kid with a sibling nearby where they could just, like stab them or something.
Yeah.
You're there, you're present, you're watching, you're not like on your phone. You gotta be there. But so now my 5-year-old, who's the one who's shown the most interest in cooking, he can actually make scrambled eggs on his own, and the only thing I do is turn on the stove. He can hold the pan on the stove, he can stir the eggs on the stove, and he is so proud of himself. We have like a child knife. I mean, the package says like 8+, but he's 5 and he's totally responsible with it. And when I'm there, he uses this. So the more we can kind of push kids to become competent, the more interest they have in cooking, learning cooking skills, learning, eating new things. Like when he's chopping up vegetables, he will eat almost any vegetable raw. I've seen him eat raw cabbage, raw onions because he's chopping it. So it looks good.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. And I think that's a good way for people that are struggling to get vegetables in to start
Absolutely.
to do.
And definitely let kids try. I mean, as long as it's not raw egg or raw meat or something that might be raw flour, none of that sort of thing. But raw fruits and veggies are usually fine to eat as long as they've been washed.
Yeah.
And trying little bits and pieces of all the things. It's fun to taste,
Yeah. So raw flour is not good?
Right. Raw flour has been linked to salmonella outbreaks.
Oh, great.
Just another.
I realize
last
it's weekend
hard.
I found my kid like scooping.
Oh, of course.
Flour,
We all have. I have, I think we do our best to keep them from eating raw, meat, eggs, flour. Obviously, my kids have also like gone around and found stuff under the radiator and eaten that. So who knows what all is in there.
Lovely.
But we do the best we can.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like make raw cookie dough and then go out of your way to encourage them to eat it. Like try to teach them that it's best to wait until it's cooked.
Yeah. Nice. Except for there are those cookie dough stores now. Have you seen those?
I feel like That just makes things so complicated. I mean, my husband got salmonella from tasting cookie dough. I was like, don't taste that. And he's like, it'll be fine. I'm 30
Oh,
or whatever. I've never gotten it before. And then he was like, deathly ill for a week.
oh my goodness. Yeah, that's scary.
It's like, see, it's real. People really do get salmonella from
Yeah,
cookie dough.
yeah,
So I'm not a huge fan of like, oh, this one's safe. Like, how are you supposed to teach our kids not to eat it? But
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Interesting. Okay, I want to ask, now that we're like kind of, I guess, going to desserts and cookie dough,
Sure.
your philosophy on desserts is interesting to me, or at least like what I've seen on your Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to know the psychology behind this, and also just how to not get your kids to, let me back up the question. You present dessert at the same time that you present the meal. Is
Right.
that right?
Often.
Okay.
Not always, but often. The reason I
Okay.
do this is because when you serve dessert on the plate with the rest of the food, a couple things happen. One, your kid isn't wondering, they're not obsessing about having that dessert later because it's already right there. They don't have to be like, oh, I want a cookie, I want a cookie, I want a cookie. We've all been at that dinner table where the kid is like, I want a cookie, I want a cookie, I want a cookie. And the parent is like, after dinner, after dinner, after dinner, and like goes on for the entire meal. It's the most unpleasant meal ever.
Yes.
You put the cookie on the plate, the kid knows the cookie is part of the meal. End of conversation. You can eat it whenever you want. Second, it really keeps the parent honest. It keeps the parent from using dessert as a bribe, because when we use dessert as a bribe, it puts dessert on this huge pedestal and kids become more obsessed, more focused. Not only that, it decreases the value of any food that you use with that bribe. So usually they say, well, you can't have the cookie until you eat your vegetables. Every single time you say that, you say, the cookie is better than the vegetables. The cookie is better than the vegetables.
Yeah.
But what do we really want to teach kids? We want to teach kids that vegetables are better than the cookie.
Yeah.
That's what we really want them to know deep down, that my body needs vegetables. And yeah, cookies are delicious and I'm going to eat those. But also, broccoli is so good and it makes me feel so strong, right?
Yeah.
That's what we really want. So really, we should be saying, if you eat the cookie, then you can have your broccoli. Now, of course, I don't recommend doing that, but because there's more complicated things at play. But really, it puts it all in the same level playing field, keeps the parents honest. And then the kid can learn to decide, what they want to eat first. I mean, sometimes they eat it first, sometimes they eat it last, sometimes they eat it sometimes they take a bite of it and all the different foods. Yeah. I think it just solves a lot of our problems.
Yeah, I love the idea. And I'll just be totally honest. In my household, dessert is on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I knock that down? Do I just start presenting it as with the meal?
Right. That's the fastest way I have ever seen parents knock it off the pedestal. Let's say a kid is totally obsessed with M&Ms. Okay, so I put 3 M&Ms on the plate. Now, I'm talking about a small kid here. If you have a 13-year-old and you're putting 3 M&Ms on the plate, that's like an insult. But for a 3-year-old, it's not that big of a deal. So you put 3 M&Ms on the plate. The kid obsesses. Oh my gosh, M&Ms! And then you put them, and then they usually when I serve it with a meal like that, a lunch or a dinner, I would say, oh, that's all that's available for this meal. We'll have more tomorrow. Okay. So then tomorrow comes around and then they have 3 more. And then tomorrow comes around. Now, usually around the 3rd day, there's a shift. And the kid is like, oh, yum, my M&Ms. And it may not be quite as big of a deal. And then what I do is I usually skip the 4th day, and maybe the 5th day I add another 3 M&Ms, and then skip a couple days and add them in, and then it becomes more routine. I've done this over and over and over. Anytime my kids seem to have an interest or an obsession with food, serve it along the side of a meal. Now, if you've been using it as a bribe and the kids are like, wait, how many bites do I have to eat before I can eat this chocolate? And just say, oh, I learned a new technique. We're not going to do that anymore. You can choose when to eat it or not.
I love that.
I mean, I think it's okay to just tell kids, hey, I learned something new and we're going to change.
That's golden. Thank you for sharing.
But you're still in charge. You're still the mom. It's not like, oh my gosh, you've suddenly given your kid this ability to eat a whole bag of candy with their dinner. No. If it's with their dinner, you could say, that's all that's available for this meal. We'll have more at another time. Now, I also balance that out with other times when my kids eat as much candy as they want. On Halloween, they're going to eat their fill of candy.
Yeah, that's my next
Right.
question. So
Halloween is coming,
we're
right?
gonna release this before Halloween, so moms will be able to kind of take this, and this is probably holds true for Easter or any other holidays where
Sure.
abundance of sweets is
Yeah.
available. So what's your game plan for Halloween? How do
Yeah,
you
so I
manage this?
just don't make that big of a deal out of it. Obviously, they're super excited about the candy. So we go collect it, we go together, we sort it, make sure it's safe, to remove any choking hazards for the little ones or anything that's open, anything like that. Then they eat, we sit down at a table, eat our fill of candy. And then, for the rest of the days, now my kids are starting to be older. So what I might do is kind of allow them to choose which meals to serve a piece of candy with for the next couple days or maybe until it's gone. Um, but basically, you're still the parent. You're still in charge of meals. You're still in charge of when food is served. You're still in charge of where people are eating. And you include candy in that plan because now they have the candy and they want to eat it. But you also don't want them just eating candy 3 days in a row. That would make for a miserable life. So you plan it out. Okay, we're going to have candy with this meal. We're going to have candy with this meal. Maybe if you serve candy for a snack, they eat as much as they want. But you put out a Greek yogurt that has lots of protein that they like. You put out maybe a muffin that you've made that has more protein in it, something like that,
Yeah.
so that they are getting the idea of balance. Like even if we eat candy, there's other food there as well. But I think the more we obsess about it and the more we say, okay, you can only keep 10 pieces and we're going to throw all the rest away, the more kids are like, oh my gosh, I have to eat 3 gallons of candy today because then all my candy will be gone.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
So
when we do that, we just teach kids that they should binge on candy
yeah,
whenever it's available
interesting.
instead of teaching them, oh, yeah, you can eat as much as you want now because it's going to be here tomorrow and it's going to be here the next day and it's going to be there the next day. There's no urgency to consume massive amounts of candy.
Fascinating. Okay. That's the reverse of what I was going to do on Halloween. I was going to let them eat it as much as they want and then get rid of it. So this is very helpful.
Yeah, we've participated in the quote Stitch Witch type thing, and I actually
Yeah.
have a brand new blog post up on my blog talking about our experience with that. That might work for a couple years, but frankly, in the long run, it wasn't that good of a fit for us. And I think it does kind of lead kids, once they value candy, it really leads kids to this idea that they are losing a lot of candy by doing that, and therefore they need to eat as much as they possibly can on Halloween night. But that's not what we
Fascinating.
want.
Yeah. So let me go back to your game plan or Halloween night, whatever Halloween this ends up being
Yeah.
when people listen to this.
Yeah, who even knows what it's going to be?
So you get the candy. So you sit at the table and they just eat as much as they want to?
Yep. I mean, in our house, we always have bedtime snacks. So technically this will be a bedtime snack. One of my kids does seem to have a sensitivity towards certain kinds of candy that result in big changes to his mood. So we're probably going to put some bounds on what he's allowed to eat and just remind him that tomorrow we'll have more. And there's some kids who have these issues. Like if they eat more than 2 pieces, then they just lose it. Or if they do this, in that case, it's fine. It's fine to set limits if you need to. Remember, if you're setting limits, you're also reminding them, hey, with bedtime snack tonight, we're having 2 pieces of candy, and then we're going to have more with lunch tomorrow. And then after lunch, they have their 1 piece or their 2 pieces. Yeah, this is all for now. We're going to have more with lunch tomorrow. You're telling them when they're going to have it next, to the point where they just know, okay, it's coming with lunch tomorrow. It's coming with lunch tomorrow. I don't have to get as worked up about it because, here's the thing, 1 piece of candy every day of your life, how is that really going to tip the balance on your health long term? I've never seen a study on that. Instead, we're looking at kids who just are having massive amounts of sugar on a daily basis, on and on and on. But in the context of a balanced diet where not every meal is sugar packed, 1 piece of candy every day may be within what the average person could actually tolerate without causing some of these negative side effects that we associate with high sugar consumption. But that's better than having a kid who binges at every birthday party, because frankly, except in a pandemic year, birthday parties happen so much.
Right.
Do you really want them eating 4 pieces of cake and 15 pieces of candy at every single birthday party and every single holiday, and every single time they come across candy, they binge eat it, or they go over to their friend's house and they sneak it? So many friends will then hold candy at their house, so every time their friend comes over, they can eat tons of candy because their mom won't let them have candy. We have to strike this balance of not letting kids feel deprived while still providing a balanced, healthy, in general, not high sugar diet, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I was that kid that didn't get candy, and I had to, and I was so baffled that my friends just had that sitting on their fridge. Like, how does that last in your house?
Right.
Yeah. So fascinating. And thank you so much for sharing all of this. We've talked a lot about kids and eating. Tell us a little bit about your business, if you will. Like, tell us what you provide. How can moms work with you further? Some of the products you have.
Sure. So it's really simple right now. What I have is a program for the families of picky eaters. It's not just for picky eaters, honestly, although that's kind of the lens, but families who are struggling with mealtime, they want their kids to eat a variety of food. They want to learn how to do it with a lot less stress. They want to unlearn a lot of the things that have caused eating stress and a really stressful mealtime. And they want to learn a better way for having meals that focus on connection and closeness with their family instead of obsessing about food and eating. And then how that leads into better eating and helping your child learn to try new food, which is a huge learning process. Takes a lot of time, especially for really picky eaters. And that's the Better Bites program. And then you learn all the advanced techniques for helping kids learn to try a new food within the context of a no pressure relationship with your child. And then I also have Real Easy Weekdays, which is a meal plan for busy families who are looking to have a brain break. Like, give me something that I don't have to think about what to make. Everything has a little bit of a learning curve. So yeah, you got to learn some new things, but it's really basic stuff. My husband was able to pick it up one day when I was having a early pandemic breakdown. He picked it up and said, okay, I'm going to plan the menu for the family. He had never planned the menu for the family. That had always been my job. He picked it up, planned a menu for the first time. And I was like, wow, I am so glad I made that.
That's amazing. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's for families who are they need a new system in their life to get dinner on the table.
Cool. So that's Real Easy Weekdays.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's all available. The wait list for Better Bites is on kidseatincolor.com, Real Easy Weekdays, kidseatincolor.com.
Cool.
And of course, you can always find me on Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook or TikTok or any of the cool places.
Nice. You're such a hip mom. You're everywhere.
Kind of had to be. Like, ooh, I gotta learn TikTok. Ooh, okay.
Yeah. We haven't taken that jump yet, but maybe it's in the works.
Yeah.
So final question. Where are you going? What's happening with Kids Eat in Color over the next 5 years? Like, what is the vision?
Oh my gosh. I have dreams. Basically, I want to develop a new form of nutrition education that is exciting, fun, and completely different from anything that anyone has experienced before. And I know that it's going to happen. It's just an issue of climbing the mountain and getting to the other side. And I just see an incredible community of moms and dads who want to do better in this area without someone like judging them every step of the way. They want to do better, but in bite-sized pieces that feel right for their family. And when they feel that connection and when they do that, they share it with other parents. And I want to be able to provide something that's better than anything that they've ever come across. They can share with their friend that really changes their friend's life, and they can feel success knowing that they helped their friend and helped themselves and built a closer community.
Wow. It's so impressive. You are amazing. It is so cool to see what you've built and just what you do for families. Like, that's a saving grace. Like, I think, mealtime can be so stressful, and I'm excited to get my hands on the Real Easy weekdays. And also when I get in line once I get accepted to your Better Bites program. So that'll be fun.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in January.
Yeah. So, and I'm excited thank you for sharing this with our moms in our community. And I think this will be a huge value for them. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. It's absolutely an honor to be a part of this and to be a part of Kids Eat in Color, and something I never imagined in my life, but I'm absolutely loving it. And it was wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for having me on.
Thank you.
The Edmonds Moms Room podcast is brought to you by Body Motion Physical Therapy. We help women through pregnancy and beyond so they can live active, confident, and healthy lives.